Club does not have a parking lot. It shares a parking lot with other businesses. So was that any consideration given?
For the hours of operation, we did not consider if they had joint parking assigned, no.
Okay, well, we have joint parking. We've got a mobile home park right behind the building. And we also have, I think you'll find some police problems with this location right now. Also, I think the applicant on this and the person getting the ABC permit, you say it's okay, but I think they're different people.
Okay, well, I'll check into that for what the application is. We can, if Vice typically gets that application, I'll have to request that from them for the ABC.
Okay. Also, Southwest United for Progress, I think, sent you a letter on this. They had researched this with all the neighborhoods in the area and everything, and they had voted not to support this because of the mobile home parks, because of the shared parking lot, and because of the police presence that we've seen at this location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Remaining questions? Items 19 through 21. Director Peck?
I'm sorry, my hand is still up. I failed to ask that item 14 be held separately, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mayor, can we get a presentation on 18?
Yes. Director Linehan?
Make sure I understand the communication.
Director Linehan's going to get that.
So let me ask just right off the top, is this like 4.4 million less than what we total funds? Maybe I'll just give you a chance to explain it all. So I don't know what the bottom line is on this.
Yes, the impact to the city as a whole, it would be a reduction in the total of 4.4 million, but that's because of the one entry that is utilization of the 2021 net income that we had. You all had asked how we would be able to utilize that. So that carries over. It's already in the fund balance, the unassigned fund balance. So this would be expending a portion of that 2021 net income. So I'll go through that in detail.
Okay, thank you.
If you could pull up the board communication, please. Okay, so this amendment, we had our first budget amendment back in May, and at that time, the only thing we did was adjust the minimum compensation for non-uniform full-time positions to $15 an hour. And so at that time, we did not adjust any of the revenues. And this amendment adjusts both revenues and expenditures, and we'll show you the final amended budget for each of the funds. It impacts all of the budgeted operating funds of the city. So in total, there will be 19 adjustments that are proposed. This first page is the summary of the general fund. So I'll go through all 8 of these adjustments individually. The one that was just asked about is number 2. So in our 2021 audited financial report, there was a net income number for the general fund that includes the general fund special projects, and seized funds. The amount that's represented here is about $60,000 less than the unassigned portion of just the general fund. Now, the actual net income was about $9.6 million, but the board approved in the final budget amendment of 2021 to put $1 million of that into the restricted reserve. So we reduced the net income by that portion that went to the restricted reserve, and we're proposing an adjustment to utilize the remainder of the unassigned increase that resulted from 2021 net income. So I'll go through that individually. So that's why you would see for 2022's budget, we don't have current revenues. That's in the first adjustment that would offset that. This is coming from 2021's net income. So the net impact to the general fund would be a loss in the current year of $6,905,987, offset by that gain in the previous year. On the net, from the original adopted budget. For the street fund on the next page, and I'll go through each of the adjustments individually in a second. For the street fund, the original adopted budget had net income of $518,000. These adjustments provide additional net income of $52,000. We're going to subtract the impact of the $15 an hour adjustment that was included in the May budget amendment, which gets us to a net income impact of $442,000 for the current year budget. For the fleet fund, the adjustments and the expenditures are the same, so it is still a zero balance net budget. For the vehicle storage fund, we'll have revenue adjustments of $190,000. We'll have an expenditure adjustment of $1,394. So we will increase the original budgeted net income of $109,000 to $298,206. In the waste disposal fund, we'll have revenue adjustments of $1,278,000. We'll have expenditure adjustments of $286,000. So we will increase net income by $992,000. When we offset that by the $15 budget adjustment for minimum wages, the net income will be $944,110. On the parking garage fund, we're adjusting revenues and expenditures by the same amount, and so there'll be a zero impact. The original adopted budget had $743,000 net income. It will continue to have $743,000 net income. So the impact to all budgeted funds is, in the current year, would be a net loss of $4,477,000, which is utilizing part of prior year's net income. So now we'll go through each of the adjustments individually. The first adjustment is to general fund revenues. So the breakdown is on the second page, and I'll go ahead and describe, or it's actually the top of page 4, right? If you'll scroll down, go to the top of page 4 of the budget communication. The next page. Okay, and stop there where you see the property taxes and sales tax and all that, and I'll describe these adjustments. So we're adjusting the revenues based on the year-to-date actual results that we've experienced through June, with some projections through the end of the year. So the sales tax adjustments that you see there, the $7,876,000, that reflects actual receipts that the city has received through August for June revenues, net of an assumed reduction of 1% for the remainder of the year. So we're making a conservative estimate for the remainder of the year for the potential impact of inflation and the economic uncertainty. The licenses and permits portion of the adjustment is a net increase. Actually, the business license piece of that is lower due to a reduction in retail inventories. Those assessments were lower, but it's more than offset by increases in mixed drink supplemental revenues, which have increased substantially with the reopening of bars and restaurants. In addition, there's a net increase to building and related permits. So the net impact of that is $331,300 increase. Our charges for services reflects net increases in the zoo and fitness revenues, partially offset by decreases in the river market admissions and golf revenues. Golf revenues have declined in comparison to prior year, primarily due to the really wet spring and then the very hot temperatures experienced this summer. The franchise fees will increase primarily due to increased natural gas prices and the cost recovery rider that the Public Service Commission approved that was associated with the 2021 winter storm. In addition, our water and water reclamation revenues are above budget due to higher than anticipated usage during the hot summer. Originally, the original budget, both of those utilities projected a decrease because last year during the winter storm, people kept their water dripping and those revenues increased with usage during the winter storm. And so they expected a drop off, while this year the usage increased quite a bit in the summer due to the really hot weather that we experienced. The local landline is increasing, partially offset by a reduction to anticipated electric, fiber optics, and cable franchise fees. Fines and fees and miscellaneous revenues will decrease from the adopted budget, and realized investment income is expected to increase with rising interest rates. Transfers in, that $75,000, reflects there was an environmental youth project, park special project, that did not occur as planned due to some of the restrictions that were still in place during the summer. So the Parks Director asked to allocate that back to the Parks Department in the general fund to use for park maintenance expenditures. So the grand total of all those revenue adjustments is $9,603,052 to increase the general fund revenue. Then number 2, if you'll scroll down a little, the utilization of the 2021 unassigned general fund net income. So as I described at the end of the year when I presented the December financial report, you all asked at that time how we would utilize that net income. And we said we would wait till the audit was complete and that we would bring it forward in the 2022 budget amendment. So in December, we made an amendment to the general fund budget for $5 million for port land acquisition. There was an additional $5 million, the second half, that needed to be funded, and that is being included in this budget amendment. So there's $5 million there. Then $3 million is being set aside for targeted community development. That's proposed to be set aside. Then you'll recall during the authorization to move forward or to review the potential for refunding the parking bonds in order to construct another parking deck, the board approved both a contract with Polk Stanley Wilcox and a reimbursement resolution from the bond ordinance. Those 2 resolutions are noted here in the write-up. But the pre-construction schematic design of the parking deck, the Polk Stanley Wilcox contract is $508,000. There's additional dollars in the contract for oversight of construction, but the portion that we need to set aside pending issuance of the bonds is just that pre-construction schematic phase. Then if we do move forward with the bonds, the city would be reimbursed this cost per the ordinance that you adopted, or the resolution that you adopted back in April. So that's the $8,508,000 utilization of prior year net income. So now we'll move to number 3. So this adjustment is a pass-through adjustment. The revenues and expenditures are equal, and this is for money that was received from the state and from the county. So first, from the state, they authorized stipends for uniformed police officers of $5,000 each, and those were funded in July and distributed to the officers. So we're showing that as both income of $2,566,540. That's what we received from the state to cover the $5,000 plus the related Medicare tax. And then you see on the expenditure side the exact offset, which is in the police department budget. The property tax levies that are dedicated to the closed police and fire pension plans are expected to increase $239,874. And so down below, I guess in addition to that, there's state pension turnback funds that were $22,841 more than projected. Those two items combined are distributed back into those pension funds, and they're showing police will have $122,000 and fire will increase $144,000. So there's zero impact in total, but both revenues and expenditures increase by $2,829,255. Number 4 is an adjustment to personnel cost for anticipated changes. So when I did the presentation a couple of weeks ago on our first quarter, I told you that fire had overfilled 15 positions in their June recruit class. They are expecting 3 to 4 retirements over the remainder of the year. So we are adding $468,836, which is the prorated cost of those 15 positions over that period from June 9th, when the recruit class started, until the September 1st date that some of those retirements were expected, and then the prorated cost of 12 for the remainder of the year. Then with the change in the reporting structure and the additional positions required for the FOIA office moving to the city attorney's office, we have an increase to the city attorney's office budget of $129,316, which is the prorated cost of the 3 positions that are in human resources that are moving to the city attorney's office, plus the addition of the assistant attorney that would that the city attorney requested. Per discussion with the city attorney's office, the 2 police sergeants that work FOIA in the police department are not moving yet at this time. So this adjustment reflects the $129,000 increase to the city attorney and the decrease to human resources budget of $80,205 for the transfer of those positions. In total, the net, along with the increase to the fire personnel, is $517,947. The next adjustment is to adjust other general fund to operating expenditures. So the first, as you are well aware, fleet fuel costs increased since we adopted our 2021 budget. So the fleet department, Mr. Hinton provided a cost increase for the general fund of $804,103. 86% of that goes to police and fire. They obviously have by far the most vehicles and utilize the most fuel. They're followed by, so that ends up being about $229,000 for fire, $459,000 for police. Parks increases about $53,500. Housing increases about $30,300, and then all other departments are $32,000. The board approved settlements that you've done so far this year. The Peaks settlement and then the Manning settlement were a combined total of $235,000. So we're adjusting the budget for those payouts. When we presented the 22 budget for, we mentioned that we anticipated covering the final second set of turnouts for fire in the ARPA allocation. That was not included in the ARPA allocation, but we have sufficient funds here to be able to include that here. So we're adding $126,000 for that final second set of turnouts that fire requested. Human resources, earlier this year, the board approved in resolution 15653, the purchase of defibrillators by human resources to place throughout the city buildings, $63,000. I mentioned in the first adjustment with the revenues that we were going to transfer in from the special project $75,000 that was initially intended for environmental youth, that will instead go to park maintenance for this year. Then emergency management notified us that we have had a siren, one of the storm sirens that needs repairs at a cost of $36,000. So we're increasing the emergency management budget by $36,000. And then finally, human resources IA Pro software, $29,000. This is software used for catastrophic leave, FMLA, other types of tracking of leave absences. So the total increase to expenditures is $1,368,103. Now, if we'll move to the next slide, there will be one adjustment to outside agency funding. I know one of the things I did want to make you aware of, I guess the one adjustment we'll have is an increase to the downtown partnership allocation of $47,500, and that was specifically for the La Petite Roche Tricentennial Celebration. The County Regional Detention Center has switched to billing on a per prisoner day basis. So far, those average billings are in line with our adopted budget. A portion of that is paid, about $166,000 in total comes from the local jail fine that's collected on tickets. The remainder comes from the general fund, but at this point, we do not see that there is an amendment required. The next item is an increase in transfers out to fund various special projects. So the first and largest is $1.6 million for relocation of the police property room. Currently, police has property room space in the ancillary police building and in the courts building. And so this anticipates relocating that property room, the cost to relocate. This was an estimate provided by the police department for securing that property and relocating it. Police also, we adopted a couple of years ago a 3-year plan for replacement of end-of-life police Motorola radios. This is the final allocation. We had anticipated we would do this with short-term financing, but we have the funds available, so we're going to take this one-time money and allocate it to a special project to utilize for the final replacement of those radios that are at end of life. Then the next item, with the opening of the new police headquarters, we now need to demolish the police headquarters building and the ancillary building that also holds that police property room storage. There are some environmental hazards associated with that. We've been provided a quote from our planning division. And so we're anticipating a cost of $600,000 to demolish those two buildings. And then that's the site that we expect to use for construction of the new courts facility with the bond funds that were approved. The park maintenance equipment, this is some heavy equipment that was on the replacement list. So this is some mowers, tractor, backhoe, some big equipment that we want to allocate for parks equipment replacement. And then I think it was a couple of weeks ago when the mayor was talking, he said we had $4.5 million set aside for targeted community development, and he got a little bit ahead of himself because we had set $1 million aside in the 2022 or 2021 budget amendment. We mentioned in the carryover of net income having $3 million allocated from that, and then the other $500,000 would be coming from current year revenues and would be part of this. So in total, we will now have $4.5 million if this budget amendment is successful. The next item is a disparity study. For several years, the city has asked to have a disparity study. We put out an RFQ because we really didn't know what it would cost and got multiple bids in. The committee met and recommended a company as the most qualified, and the company is Keen, and they've provided an estimated quote of $390,000 for that disparity study. So we've added that to this budget amendment. Then the Real-Time Crime Center, you're aware that we allocated $200,000 in seized funds, I believe it was, initially for some equip or software and different things for them. Then in the recent ARPA allocation that passed, there was $1 million included for the real-time crime center. This $300,000 brings that total to $1.5 million, which is what police said they needed for the real-time crime center. The next item is the 13th Street parking lot. This is construction of a parking lot that will service the 12th Street station, and that estimated cost is $300,000. Planning and Public Works have a need to do a drainage manual update. So $250,000 of that will come from general fund allocation, and the remaining $100,000 to fund the $350,000 project will come from the street fund, and that's part of the street fund amendment that you're going to see in a moment. And then the board approved in a resolution earlier this year, it was Resolution 15591, the purchase of a furniture package for Philander Smith for the 12th Street station, that first floor. This will be recovered via the lease payments that Philander will make, but the initial outlay will come from, as we're constructing for the furniture, will come from this allocation. And then Housing has requested $50,000 in a special project for potential emergency relocation assistance for residents. And this could be due to, weather emergencies or other types of emergencies that could come up where a resident would need to be temporarily relocated. And so that total transfers out for these special projects would be $5,946,819. Then finally, on the next page for the 8th General Fund Amendment, we adopt a budget for vacancy savings and vacation and sick leave payouts each year. And then each month, as those savings are realized, they're allocated to the department. So for additional money for vacation sick payouts is taken out of the general fund allocation and deposited to the departments where that expense happens. The reverse happens with the vacancy savings. So we adopt a negative budget for vacancy savings, and then as the savings is realized, we debit that budget and we offset the department personnel budget because they will not utilize that for personnel cost. So the allocation is shown in the vacancy savings allocation. This is through August. The vacation sick payouts are shown by department. So the total adjustment is the combination of those two adjustments. The original personnel budget for each department is shown in the next column. And then as you'll recall, in the first budget amendment, when we did the $15 per hour adjustment, these are the departments that were impacted. So I'm showing that adjustment. And then the other personnel cost adjustments that I went through in this amendment, which included the payout of the police stipends, the adjustments to the closed police and fire pension plan contributions, the reduction to the HR budget for the transfer of the FOIA positions, the increase to the city attorney are shown there. So the revised personnel budget in the general fund will go from $166,658,000 to $170,126,000. And again, every number in this table has already been shown in the other adjustments. The vacancy savings allocation and the vacation sick payouts do not result in a net adjustment. It's just reallocating it to the departments where that occurred. So now we'll move to the street fund adjustments. So in the street fund, we're adjusting the revenues by a total of $628,200. We're expecting the property tax budget to be slightly less than what we had originally included in the adopted budget, but the state gas turnback fund is based on year-to-date revenues and projected through the end of the year, and we expect that to be higher than what was included in the original adopted budget by about $600,000. And then, like the general fund, the realized investment income will increase due to rising interest rates for a total positive adjustment of $628,200. The increase to the street fund operating expenditures is the fuel cost adjustment that Fleet projected of $224,442 increase. And then the next adjustment is some special project allocations from street fund. So the first, the board recently approved an MOU with the Methodist Children's Home for Charles Bussey traffic improvements at $100,000. That will come from the street fund. There is an MOU with Pulaski County and Woodland Hills for traffic flow at Canis Road and Cooper Orbit, and the city's share of that would be $150,960. And then, as I described previously, the drainage manual update cost is being split between the planning division transfer and Public Works street fund, $100,000 here for a total of $350,000. The next adjustment will be in the fleet fund. And so charges for services, this is the fuel. The fleet fund is an internal service fund. It services all of the other funds. So fuel is billed to the other funds, to the general fund, the street fund, the other funds. And so their revenues reflect those internal service billings, but they purchase all of the fuel, so their expenditures are also increasing by the same amount, which is $1,030,000 estimate. And then vehicle storage fund, our storage fees are up $40,000 above budget, projected to be $40,000 by the end of the year. The auction sales are above budget. We've had more auctions, and we expect that to be $150,000 higher, for a total favorable adjustment of $190,000 to vehicle storage revenues. We'll flip to the next page. We're adjusting vehicle storage cost by $1,394. The next fund that will have an adjustment is the waste disposal fund. So two main things have occurred here. We're going to have an increase in sanitation fees, landfill fees, realized investment income, and gain or loss on the sale of equipment, and then miscellaneous associated with insurance recoveries. But the insurance recoveries and the vehicle auction sales are generating the gain loss on sale equipment and the miscellaneous increases. The landfill fee increases due to the return of private haulers now that we have opened that additional cell. Those revenues through August are up 32% now that we've reopened a new cell. The sanitation fees, we discovered that Central Arkansas Water had made a change when they were sending us the sanitation fees, and they were netting the expense of collection, the services that they provide, out of those revenues. And we already had that budget in our expenditures, but it lowered the budget for revenues. We didn't realize they were doing that. So we're increasing the sanitation revenue budget. We've already got the expense budgeted in our expenditures, so that increases their revenues by $1,278,000. And then the fuel cost adjustment for waste disposal is $286,000. Finally, the parking garage fund. So parking garage fund revenues are being reduced by $156,000 here, and this is just a budget issue. The actual revenues have been recorded correctly, but when Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau submitted to us the estimated revenue budget, they were including in revenue the sales tax that they collect on the rental of spaces that they turn around then and remit to the state. And that should not be reflected as an operating revenue. It should be passed through as a liability directly to the state. On the flip side, they had that payment to the state reflected as expense. So we're reducing both the revenue and the expense by the same amount. Again, the actuals have been correct. It's just the budget that was not aligned properly. So this realigns the budget. There's no impact to the net income of the parking garages in total. That concludes a very complex budget amendment. Are there Any questions?
Director Wright.
I just want to say thank you. I thought my head was going to start to explode after a while.
It took a lot to pull it together, I'll tell you.
Oh, my God. But anyway, I heard some very exciting news. I know the people in Spring Valley Manor and Woodlands Hills and all those areas are going to be very, very happy that we finally ended that MOU with Pulaski County so we can get that alignment done out there. So I can't wait to let them know that. And I'm also very, very happy to see the allocation for the Targeted Community Development Initiative. And they're going to be extremely happy when we have our next meeting. And then we can begin to talk about how we can access some of those funds for the projects that we have and need in these areas. So it's very complex, but it's very good news.
Director Adcock.
Yes. We closed 2 golf courses because they was losing money. And I noticed that now we have $84,000 as a loss in our golf courses.
It's not a loss. The revenues at the golf courses are increased over what they had been before we closed those 2 golf courses. They're definitely more productive. It's just last year, we had really, really high revenues in golf because that was a safe outdoor activity. We saw a huge increase when people began to get back out after COVID. This year, because of the temperatures and how hot it was during the summer, there were fewer golfers during that period when there's usually more. It's still higher revenues than what we had traditionally experienced, but it's lower than what we had anticipated based on last year's increase.
We usually get a printed copy of this. Are we going to get a printed copy of what you've gone over?
It was included in the pony that was distributed. Normally, we do the board communication for this.
Okay.
I'm sure that someone can get you a
The parking lot
printed
at
copy.
13th Street for the police department, we built the parking lot across the street from Hoover, which I've been through there 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks, and there is 0 cars on that parking lot. So now we are building another $300,000 parking lot when we have one sitting there that's not being used.
Mr. Moore, if you'll explain.
Director Adcock, it has been a challenge for a variety of reasons. The one that, and a lot of it is just in the times we live, the parking at 12th Street for our men and women of the police department isn't secure. So with the additional tenants, 3 tenants that are coming in, as you know, UMS, Southern Bancorp, and Philander, there is a need for additional parking, which that parking will be, the parking lot will be available to them that we built on 13th Street behind the church. The church still uses it too. But the parking for the police department, we need to secure. We really want, the whole plan is to have that entire block. We haven't been able to successfully negotiate with the family that's there on the corner. But the whole plan was always to have that entire block, even make either close 13th Street or make it a one-way, so it becomes more secure for our police officers and the general public.
Mr. Moore, I completely agree with that, but that brings up another subject. For about the last 10 years, the Southwest Police Department has asked you to make their parking lot secure. People walk through there all the time, going back through the neighborhoods, and we have the same problem there. So can you tell me why 13th Street is not being done and that's not being done for the Southwest Police?
It actually is. We're drawing up plans for both Southwest and Northwest. So all of the parking will be secure at those locations.
Sarah, at this time, has any of the $4.5 million in targeted community development been spent
I
or
don't-
allocated?
I don't believe the committee has made any recommendations on that yet, that we had to have the funds set aside before they could begin spending. And then, of course, expenditures over 50,000 come to the board for approval.
Director.
Well, there were, there were two projects, if you remember. One was Yorkwood, and the other was on King, MLK, two drainage projects that were part of that. So,
Weren't those part of the ARPA, the first ARPA allocation though, as
right,
opposed?
well, but we
yeah.
still designated them as targeted neighborhoods because they fell within the. Correct.
Right, it's not these, it is part of the
Well,
ARPA.
but as you know, when we have projects that fall within those designated boundaries, we do note them, and those were two that we started off with. But no, these are not included in this.
Do we plan on spending this 4.5 million this year? We've got 3 more months left in this year. Are we going to spend this whole 4.5 million this year, Mr. Moore?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so that would be carried over to next year? Well, I'm asking.
It is going into a
is we
special
said that
project.
we was going to try to spend 5 million of the year. We haven't spent the 4.5 this year, so does that roll over to next year?
Correct.
Or do we just say we start all over anew?
No, ma'am. Once the board designates these as targeted neighborhoods or these funds, then they'll go into a special project, so they won't go toward the bottom line at the end of the 22 budget year that will be considered an audit. It will be set aside as targeted community development special project, and those funds will stay there until they're utilized.
Okay, and on the disparity study, I would like to see a copy of that RFQ or RFP that went out, if you would send that to me, please.
Okay.
And I believe that's all my questions. Thank you.
Director Richardson. Director Richardson.
Explanation. Yes, Mayor, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for going through the explanation and answering Joan's question. I think that, in essence, you addressed the issue that Joan and a couple of colleagues brought up before about the retail space in the 12th Street station and why it wasn't being used. And parking was an issue, and I give you credit, Bruce, for talking with command staff and helping them deal with why they're not utilizing that parking lot that we had built. And security was one of the reasons and one of the issues. So for the most part, the police officers used 13th and Pine and Cedar as places where they park their vehicles and change it to their police vehicles, which limits parking availability for any kind of retail activity. So I think that your point that you just made to Joan actually refutes the point she made 2 weeks ago that we have just a bunch of plans sitting around and we're not doing anything with these plans. This was done back in 2008, and we don't want to discourage people. When we had the folks come and do the targeted development report, that Joan made a reference that we just have all these plans and plans just sitting. So I think your point about our involvement with Philander Smith, UAMS, and Southern Bancorp actually refutes that point. And actually it encourages people to get involved when we want to have them involved in some of the things that we're doing. And if there's any plans that are being presented to us and they're not being implemented, that's just a reflection on us. It's not a reflection on the people that we commissioned to be a part of these groups to bring us ideas of what they want to see happen in their communities. So I thank you for answering that, because, you and I have had many conversations about that. And as you said, the original plan for the 12th Street revitalization was to close 13th Street down between Cedar and Pine Street and make all of that space behind the police station parking for police and police only, and access for police and police only. And the stumbling block has been the purchase of that one property. And I don't think we should do it through eminent domain. I think we need to be good partners with the neighborhood. I think you've done an excellent job of trying to reach out to them and make some, I think, suitable offers to help them get on board what we're trying to do. But I just find it quite interesting that you've been doing this and we've been doing this for quite a while. And regardless of whatever we do at that station, it's not in Ward 2 anymore now, so it's Ward 1. Regardless of whatever we do there, it never seems to be enough. It seems to be a lot of disjointed questions and or concerns about the efforts that we put into that area in terms of revitalizing and helping make that police station more functional and making it more viable for that space to be used for retail opportunities that we are working with Philander and UAMS and Southern Bancorp right now. So, Bruce, thank you for doing that. That's part of our overall plan. And as Sarah mentioned, that the costs that we're incurring right now, we will recoup those costs through lease agreements, and they won't cost us anything. We'll get paid back what we're putting in that 8,000 square feet right now. So I just wanted to thank you, Bruce, for clearing that up. Hopefully it clears up. Hopefully I didn't make it more complicated by commenting on it, because sometimes when I comment on it, it makes it more complicated. So hopefully, Bruce, your explanation clears it up, and I didn't complicate it anymore by just giving you a compliment and jumping in and saying something about it. But thank you for doing that, and thank you for the work that we've done in that area. And that Director Miller's ward now area as I said earlier, we don't have plans just sitting. We have plans that are active. They're engaged in plans that we're doing right now. That was done back in July 2008 when we came up with that plan. This board adopted it in 2009, 13 years ago. And we just finished the Jumpstart grant, the work on Pine and Cedar Street that you see over there between 12th, 13th, and 14th, and 10th and 11th Street. So it's ongoing work, and it requires a commitment. It requires cooperation and participation and support for each and every one of us. And it is part of the city. So as being at-large director, my good friend Joan, it is part of your ward as well. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor, for Director Linehan. First, thank you for the work. I know this was a lot of work and a lot of good things, as Director Wright mentioned, are happening for our residents and for our employees, especially with the wage increase. You may have mentioned this and I may have missed it, but could you, if you've already said it, again, I apologize, but as it relates to the franchise fees increase, what do we attribute to that $1.4 million increase?
So I did go through, I think in the narrative for the first adjustment.
Right.
At the top of the page 4 in your board communication, there were multiple pluses and minuses, but by far the largest positive adjustment, which I believe was over $700,000 by itself, was the associated with the increase in the natural gas prices and which affects the gas utility, and then the increase passed on due to the Public Service Commission adjustment for the winter storm recovery from last year.
Oh, okay, you did.
And I
I'm
talked
sorry.
about that in the first presentation as well. The utility had told us that customers' bills could go up as much as almost 40% through that period. It won't be the entire year, but through the heavier use periods of gas, and that's what drove that up.
Okay, I recall that now. Thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Director Wyrick, you have another comment on this?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a statement. Yorkwood, the drainage at Yorkwood was supposed to have been done on sales tax dollars. And then the ARPA funds came in and we moved it from the sales tax dollars to the ARPA fund. I don't remember it's been so long since it came up. I don't remember what the question was, but I did want to make that clarification, how it originally got started. The other thing I wanted to ask, and it's not a budget amendment, but how much longer are we going to be meeting in these facilities?
We have not, Office of Executive Administration have not made that decision, but we are working towards making some changes. Mr. Moore can share about those changes.
Yes, and I actually consult with Dr. Campiris about a lot of things, but especially dealing with COVID and so forth. We've looked at a lot of options, and obviously, this is a great facility, and we haven't been able to rent out this space. And I've committed to Leland that as soon as we can get the boardroom renovated, as you know, the board set aside $500,000 for us to renovate the city boardroom. So we met, Susan and I met with the architect about a week ago. He should have final plans. And, given where we are with supply chain, nobody's giving you a set time frame anymore. But hopefully things will start. And part of the renovations will be a whole new AV system. So Wendell and his colleagues will be working with our contractor to put in a whole new AV system. And so that said, we're probably looking early 2023, just from the time frame. But again, they're hesitating just because of supply chain.
So I don't think this will be a budget amendment request, but I would like to have another device so that I can look at the items online. Because as you know, with one device, this projects out to the public, and all we can see is whatever's being done in the presentation. I have a cell phone that I can look at the different items on, but it's very tiny and it's very cumbersome to do that. So I'd like to have another device that I can use to look at the agenda items, drill down into the ordinances and the resolutions.
And that's one item that will be included with the renovations, but I know you're talking about now. But on the short, I thought we had iPads for everybody, but are they not working? I know we had one issue with Director Webb's.
I have an iPad, but this one is used to project to the public, and then it's hijacked for presentations. And
Okay.
I'm not able to go in and look at agendas or resolutions online, except on my personal cell phone. So what I'm asking for is another device.
Okay, Angie and we'll figure it out. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe there's others that would like to do the same thing. I don't know. It could be just a BJ Wyrick thing, but it'd be nice to be able to see, what the presentation is, and then to drill down to the details that go with it.
Okay.
That's why I was asking about the time frame and all that, because I kind of put off asking for it for a while, but it seems like it's going to be next year before we know anything. So
We'll get whatever you all need.
hopefully that's not a budget amendment.
Oh, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take this time to share appreciation to Director Linehan, her finance team, in really pulling this budget amendment together. As members of the board know, it's a very complex transfers in, transfers out. The Office of Executive Administration spent a lot of time ensuring that we were very deliberate with how we utilize these surplus funds of close to $9 million. And I want members of the board to truly understand what we're preparing to do next Tuesday when we are going to fulfill a commitment to the Port Authority by giving an additional $5 million to continue to focus on economic development. The Office of Executive Administration proposed to continue to ensure that we live up to the Targeted Community Development Resolution and ensuring that we get, as funds are available, $5 million each year. We're now at $4.5 million. As we know, the Targeted Community Development Committee will review those funds and show how they are able to be expended, fully fund the Real-Time Crime Center as well. and continue to work with not only developers, but the community as it relates to the MOU with Cooper Orbit, as well as Charles Bussey, two things that we've worked diligently with the community and the residents, and also the respective ward directors in those areas. And so I think this is something that really shows not only a collaborative approach, but our approach that really is very deliberate with what we do with these surplus funds. And we have surplus, because our economy continues to grow, and we have a great finance team that helps the Office of Executive Administration be good stewards alongside the members of the board. So thank you so much. I will now transition, I believe, are there any questions for 20 and 21? 20 and 21? And we also have Mr. Jay Cheshire. I wasn't going to let you leave. If you'll briefly address everyone. Can't get by that fast. We just announced some new jobs the other day.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the Board of Directors, Mr. Vice Mayor, and all that that you're doing, because our hats are off to you for doing this work. We know that it is a lot of work. As the Mayor said, continuing to invest in our infrastructure allows us to continue to grow this community, this city, and we appreciate everything that you're doing and are proud to be your partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. You can leave now. I know you're running out. All right, Director Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. My questions are not on the agenda, but I do want to ask the city manager to follow up with me regarding my request for the Dover Drive alternative entrance. You were supposed to meet with your staff and have some information for me today.
I did say early next week, after being out there, early this week, after being out there, I've been working on just some additional information, and hopefully I'll have that in the next few days.
Okay. Okay, I'll let them know that. And I have a question for our Planning and Zoning Department regarding the corner of Potter and Colonel Glenn. I've been asked several times, have there been any applications filed? I know initially when they were rezoning it so that it was C3, I had my reservations, but the property couldn't sell without that zoning change.
I think you asked Jamie, and I think he replied that we didn't have any applications at this point.
Okay, I never got a response. That's why I'm bringing it up. Even if he did, okay, I apologize. Charge it to my head. I may have overlooked it, but I don't ever recall.
I'll confirm, but I remember you asking that.
Okay, the next question is for you. At 3813 28th Street, the easement. You told me that easement had been cut. I went over there. It has not. The ditch is clean. The easement is on the side, outside of her fence, and it's basically woods. I understand you saying she needs to cut what's leaning over her fence, but the easement part, and Mr. Carpenter says we've cut easements in the past.
And I looked at it from, I guess, 28th Street and the other side of the other side, just, that'd be south. So where the drainage ditch is, and I took pictures, I mean, that's clean. That you can see it. You can see it all the way through. So that, when I said they cut the drainage easement, they did. The rest of it, and Tom can go out and look at it. I can show you pictures, Tom. It has grown up, but it's not blocking the drainage piece. And what I think her first complaint was the limbs on her, kind of over her house. And so there's a lot of similarly situated residents throughout the city, but the city's responsibility is to make sure the drainage easement is cut and free to flow, and in this case it is. And
Okay, Mr. Carpenter, will you respond to that? Because this doesn't make any sense to me. We own that easement that's impacting this person's property. with all this overgrowth. And I'm hearing from the city manager that we can make a citizen cut their property, but we can't cut our own. That's what this is boiling down to.
Director Wright, first off, an easement is not an ownership of property, it's a right to be there. And what I've consistently said is if we've got an easement and it is for a purpose like drainage, then, I see nothing wrong with the city cutting it, and I also don't see any justification for the city having it if it's not a part of drainage. If it is a part of drainage, and I'm going by the pictures that you showed me, that's all I've seen. You get one of these massive rains, the 100-year, the 50-year, the 500-year flood situation, and what is it going to do? And so that's where I was coming from. I will get with Mr. Moore tomorrow and look again, but because he just said that the drainage is across the street and it's taken care of, so I need.
No, this is her house, this is the easement, this is the drainage ditch. It's all together.
Well, I mean, then the question is, why do we have an easement that we don't need for drainage on somebody's property? I mean, so there, it's.
I would appreciate a legal opinion here from you, Mr. Carpenter, because this makes no sense to me. Because we write tickets to citizens all the time for their property being overgrown. And we send them to environmental court. And if you solve this, to me, it needs to go to environmental court. And we need to pay a fine to be made to cut it. Now, I'm just being logical and rational about it. If this was next to my house, I would be very upset, and she is upset. So if you need to drive out there, 3813 West 28, I'd appreciate it, but I want to get this matter settled once and for all.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd appreciate that, okay.
Director Peck?
No, I'm not,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm not done, I said I had several. That's the 28, that's the Potter. The next one is the National Night Out. I keep getting people questioning me. We hadn't said anything about this. It's right around the corner. Are we doing National Night Out? If we are, that means we moving our October meeting, first Tuesday in October to the Monday. Is that correct? I got an email from.
I'm pretty sure it's already on the agenda that shows that, but Director Wright, we are having National Night Out. That meeting has been changed. I believe there's going to be some communication from Housing Neighborhood Programs here pretty soon.
Well, I got a question from one of the housing staff about the neighborhood having an event. And I said, the board hadn't been officially told that we're actually having National Night Out. So that's where I was coming from with that. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Peck?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to commend city staff. We had our bond meeting in Pankey on Thursday and had a good turnout, and people were very complimentary about the presentations and excited about the possibilities for some improvements. A woman did stand up and ask me about Litfest, and I had to say that I really didn't have any information, and I deferred to Bruce, and he didn't have a lot of information. So with it being, I guess, in 3 weeks, could you tell us a little bit about it?
There'll be some, from the Litfest committee, there'll be some information forthcoming here pretty soon. I believe there's already been some announcements. I don't have it on me, but I'll make sure you get it.
Okay, because I told her I would follow up with her, and I did look on the littlerock.com calendar of events that the CBB puts out. There's nothing on there. You act like you want to talk, Antoine.
Is that okay?
Oh, please.
He's on the A&P Commission, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have been, I will get with the A&P Commission, make sure that it's on. I know it's not on there, and I've made requests for other things to be added, so we'll make sure to get that added, Director Peck. I do know I'll follow the Litfest on social media, so there have been some announcements on their social media pages about different events that are coming that weekend, but I'll make sure to get it on the littlerock.com calendar with the A&P Commission. It's October 7th, 8th, and 9th. Correct. October 7th, 8th, and 9th, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So on their Litfest social media pages, there have already been some announcements about things that are happening on their social media pages.
Well, I can tell her to follow that. And
Absolutely.
I know about the social media. So any advertising, it seems like the CVB would certainly be hooked in and.
My understanding from the reports I got from CVB staff that they are hooked in. I don't think the rollout of the announcements from the Lit Fest committee have made it to the CVB calendar, but they are cooperating and collaborating with CVB. I do know that because we get that report from the as A&P commissioner.
I think that when this woman stood up and made this comment, I mean, she obviously was very excited about it, but she thought there would be signs, there'd be a lot of hoopla.
I agree.
Because, you know, when we want to be successful, but, I mean, is there a budget or a list of sponsors, or how can I find out more information?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can get you that information. I don't have it, but I can get it, if that's okay. But I don't have it now. But I completely understand her concern and your concern to make sure that it's advertised through CVB on their calendar. So I will get with those folks and make that happen ASAP.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I know there's some communication there. Again, please follow there is a Lit Fest social media. I know I just don't have it just because I have it in front of me right now, but I do know there's been some announcements and there are going to be some other announcements here coming soon. And advertising is commencing, so. Any other questions? And please put it on your calendar, October 7th through the 9th. Again, we hope this to be, as we all know, Riverfest did not become Riverfest overnight. It takes time, and so we're excited that this will be the inaugural year that we hope to continue to build upon. So we're excited about it.
And the word on the street, Mayor, is that there may be a special panel hosted on that Saturday about the business of sports. And in my other job, I represent athletes, so I will be moderating that panel. So if y'all want to come check me out on that Saturday, October the 8th, I appreciate y'all's support. Appreciate it, Mayor.
No, we don't have a motion in agenda meetings, but we will end this meeting.